all of this, of course, starts with a war on the NRA. Get through the NRA, take out the Second Amendment. That's their game plan. Well, I want to welcome now a good friend of the program, Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina and NRA board member Mark Robinson. Also with us, a good friend of mine, Second Vice President for the NRA and Chairman of the NRA Outreach Committee, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Willis Lee. Governor, Colonel, great to have you both on the program.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thanks for having me, Grant. It's prayers to you all.
Absolutely, guys.
Deep freeze right now. The NRA is the most inclusive civil rights organization ever, anywhere. And that's because we're focused on the Second Amendment, not race, not color, not even ideology. And this move you've talked about all week, where we'll be able to reincorporate out of a tyrannical state of New York to a freedom-loving Texas, it enables us to provide even more of NRA's best in the business training, firearms safety, and programs across all demographics, including any of the identities the left can invent.
Yeah. You know, it is very true. When we talk about the war on the NRA, they know in order to get a bill like this through, they've got to try to debilitate the NRA. Mark Robinson, you've watched the NRA be attacked for years and years and years. But one of the secrets now is that there is a changing face of the NRA. You've got more minorities, you've got more women than ever before, younger people, too, joining the NRA. Mark Robinson, what do you tell the leftists out there gunning for the NRA and our rights?
The very first thing I would say is this. You mentioned in the opening something the left likes to talk about. Common sense gun control legislation, common sense gun laws. The greatest piece of common sense gun legislation or greatest common sense piece of gun law that was ever written is the Second Amendment of our Constitution. That is what we need to be following. That is what we need to be upholding. We see what has happened to nations who do not allow their citizens to remain armed and fall under the rule of tyrannical governments. We have seen it throughout the 20th century. We have watched the mass graves be filled. We have watched people be thrown into prison. We've watched it. It's all recorded in history. We know how this story ends. So those folks on the left that are trying to take away our gun rights, I can say these two things. We're not going to let it happen without a fight. And number two, we're just simply not going to comply when you're trying to take away our constitutional rights. That is absolute no.
Yeah, you know, I saw a T-shirt on Instagram the other day. It said, "You outlaw guns, you make me an outlaw." I guess in some respects, they're probably true. Colonel, when you look at the NRA and the situation it's been going through, what do you tell members, and what do you tell members specifically to push back against these overreaching laws?
Well, Grant, thanks. I appreciate that question because we get a lot of that. We're watching multiple attacks against the NRA, which just gives an indication of how afraid they are of us. And I'll use some of those words the Democrats tend to use and the liberals want to throw around. Part of this is the Democrats' racist class warfare against the people who are most needy and need the protection. We shouldn't have to pay for a civil right. My neighborhood can't afford 7,000 National Guard troops protecting us. None of my friends have a Secret Service detail protecting them. Common sense, you want common sense, you should be able to defend yourself against a murderer or a rapist. You should be able to protect your family when an armed burglar comes into your home. You are your first responder, regardless of whether the Democrats want to defund the police or not.
Yeah, you know, it is so true. Mark Robinson, I want to ask you, you became Lieutenant Governor of the great state of North Carolina. Your video went viral speaking up for gun rights. You are proof, and I'd like to get you to give a message to everybody out there that wants to change government. You are proof that the everyday guy can do it and ultimately become Lieutenant Governor in the United States of America.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, my story could only happen in America. This is the only nation where my story could happen. And when we're talking about these gun laws, you know, what we need to remind people first off is this. In order for us to push back against these folks that are attempting to take away our constitutional rights, we have to band together. We have to get politically active. We have to get politically motivated. We have to join groups like the NRA that's going to continue to fight for our gun rights. And then we have to understand what's actually going on. Willis mentioned this tax that they're talking about placing on AR-15s, a $200 tax on each rifle and a $200 tax on each magazine. Who is it that can afford those things? It's the Joe Bidens of the world that can afford those things. The man who's living in the inner city surrounded by gangs, he can't afford that. And besides that, right, my major issue with all of those things is this. It is a direct violation of the spirit of the 24th Amendment. It's almost like you're placing a tax on a constitutional right. And that is an absolute no-go. So, we're urging folks out there to stand up and push back against this.
Yeah. Governor, I'll tell you, there's no almost about it. That's exactly what they are trying to do. Since when do we tax your right? And it's a shame. Mark Robinson, Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, thank you. Colonel Willis Lee, I appreciate you coming on the program as always. Thank you both for what you do for gun owners and gun rights in America. We'll talk again soon, guys. Still ahead on Stinchfield.